In 1980, the Chiefs of Canada adopted a declaration called the Declaration of First Nations. And that was part of a rethinking of the role of the National Indian Brotherhood. And although the National Indian Brotherhood is still on the books as a legal entity, the Assembly of First Nations is not incorporated, so they use the entity called National Indian Brotherhood. Before the A.F.N was set up, the National Indian Brotherhood was a national organization composed of what we called PTOs, Provincial Territorial Organizations. So every province, they were generally modeled within, it took their form within the province. So in British Columbia, there was a Union of BC Indian Chiefs. In Alberta, it was the Indian Association of Alberta. In Saskatchewan, it was the Federation of Saskatchewan Indians. In Manitoba, it was the Manitoba Indian Brotherhood. So these provincial territorial organizations were generally chiefs-driven, that the authority and the accountability flowed through the chiefs. In Alberta, until the early 80s, it was a membership organization where each Indian band member, a member of an Indian band, could carry, in addition to a federal status card, could carry an Indian Association of Alberta membership card. So A.F.N was a body set up by the First Nations across the country to create a unified voice vis-a-vis the federal government. Back in before the Constitution was patriated, there were all sorts of unresolved issues with regard to Aboriginal title. You know, they never ceded the land in British Columbia. On the violated treaty rights in the treaty areas, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario. All the provincial territorial organizations had their own issues, had their own interests. They were all affected differently by federal policy, but they all had things in common. So they had a rallying cry in 1980 because of the federal government's attempts to unilaterally patriate Canada's Constitution back from Great Britain. And that kind of unified the chiefs behind to work together, although there's much division still in the patriation lobby. They had to have a unified voice, and that unified voice became morphed from the National Indian Brotherhood into the Assembly of First Nations. It was driven by a council of chiefs who, there were different ideas about what a national organization would be and what it might look like. The inherent rights principle was in the Declaration, if memory serves me right. It said, the Creator gave us the authority to govern ourselves. Not Canada, not some delegated, municipal form of authorization, but the Creator. And so that was a radical step, that they first started thinking about, why do we have to go to Canada to get authority to run our own affairs? And so the notion of inherent rights, these things we had that we never gave up, it was a common principle. In BC, they didn't have treaties, so they could say, we never gave up our land, or we never gave up our right to practice local autonomy, to some people call sovereignty, it's a scary word.